If you've spent any time reading the New Testament at all, you'll have at least heard about our first story, the Apostle Paul. Paul's conversion is one of the most dramatic and transformative events in the early Christian church. Before he was the Apostle Paul, he was known as Saul of Tarsus. He was a member of a very strict Jewish sect of the first century, the Pharisees. Pharisees believed things like resurrection of the dead on the day of the Lord sometime in the future. They believed in the coming of a Messiah. They believed in following the laws of Moses. In fact, you might have more in common with them than you think. Of course, they did have a reputation for being strict. As in, the commandments from God weren't enough, so they stacked on over 600 more laws on top, just to be safe. You might say they had a strong sense of morality, or they were obsessed with perfection, or they were super controlling, dogmatic, oppressive, harsh, and domineering. And while their intentions may have been in the right place, some things got out of hand. For example, in John chapter 5, Jesus miraculously healed a man at the pool of Bethesda. It was on the Sabbath. The Pharisees were enraged, accusing Jesus of breaking the Sabbath law. The Pharisees classified healing as work on the Sabbath, and that was a serious Pharisee no-no. In the book of Luke chapter 6, Jesus' disciples picked some grain and ate it as they walked through a field on the Sabbath. The Pharisees were enraged again, accusing them of breaking the Sabbath. Now, they weren't wrong about Sabbath observation per se, but in Jesus' words, the Sabbath was made for man. Now, Saul. We don't know where Saul was during the ministry and death of Jesus, but here's what we do know. He was born in Tarsus, which is in modern-day Turkey. Tarsus was part of the Roman Empire, and being a citizen of the Roman Empire had some perks. You had the right to a fair trial, you were protected from degrading forms of punishment like being whipped or crucified, you had the right to travel freely throughout the empire, and you also had the right to appeal to the emperor. Saul was privileged. Tarsus was an expensive city, most likely due to its status as a thriving commercial center. It was known as the greatest of all the cities in Cilicia, which was southern Asia Minor. Tarsus was also a university city, lots of academics and intellectuals. So Saul was educated from an affluent intellectual major city. We know from later on in Acts that at some point he moved to Jerusalem and studied under the esteemed rabbi Gamaliel, who was, you guessed it, a Pharisee. That detail is in Acts chapter 22. So, for the purposes of our discussion, Saul is a privileged smarty-pants know-it-all with connections, and he's fixated on doing what is right before God at all costs. The first mention of Saul of Tarsus appears in the record of him as a witness to the stoning of Stephen, the first Christian martyr. Men laid their coats at Saul's feet so they could throw stones. Saul was in agreement with this stoning, though technically it was illegal. Saul saw the early Christian movement as a threat to the Jewish faith and way of life. So, why was it so off-putting? Well, the early Christians claimed that Jesus was the Messiah, a direct challenge to the Pharisees' belief in a coming Messiah who would restore the Jewish kingdom and bring salvation to the Jewish people. Christian beliefs didn't help early Christians' relationships with the Pharisees. In fact, it sealed their fate. Saul had the reflection in Acts 26.
I used to believe that I ought to do everything I could to oppose the very name of Jesus the Nazarene. Indeed, I did just that in Jerusalem. Authorized by the leading priests, I caused many believers there to be sent to prison. And I cast my vote against them when they were condemned to death.
One more thing you need to know about this story is that the author, Luke, was an astute historian and widely respected as one. His accounts are meticulous and accurate. He incorporates historical and cultural details of the time. His writings are a valuable source of historical information and a testimony to early Christianity. In Acts chapter 9, he tells us this.
Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem.
Saul upheld his convictions to a fault. He persecuted and arrested and killed early Christians, seeing it as his religious duty to protect the Jewish faith and the way of life. His Roman citizenship allowed him to move freely within the empire, so why not hunt down more Christians in other places? And he did. Saul was on a mission. And here's where we get one of the Bible's great plot twists. Jerusalem to Damascus is roughly a 150-mile trip. On foot, this would probably take a couple weeks. As Paul nears Damascus, a sudden light from heaven flashes around him. He falls to the ground, and a voice calls out.
Saul, Saul, why are you out to get me? Saul answers, Who are you, Master?
Okay, hold it right there. Number one, how bright does a light have to be for you to fall to the ground? I'm thinking like really bright. And number two, how intimidating does a voice need to be for you to answer in profound respect? Remember, Saul is a successful big shot at the top of his game, yet he's very clear on who has the power in this situation. The voice responds,
I am Jesus, the one you're hunting down.
Can you even imagine what is going on in Saul's mind? This is Jesus. I think it's safe to say that everything he's ever worked toward his entire life has just been canceled. His career, and most of all, his entire belief system. And the voice continues.
Go into the city, and you will be told what you must do.
The men traveling with him stood there speechless, and I'm so grateful Luke recorded that little detail. They heard the sound, but didn't see anyone. How do you think this made Saul look? There's no one to corroborate this outrageous story. So Saul gets up, opens his eyes, and he's blind. For 3 days, he was blind and did not eat or drink anything. Later, we learn that Saul saw a man in a vision by the name of Ananias, who was going to place his hand on him to restore his sight. A profound encounter, no matter how you look at it. Let's say you don't believe the supernatural encounter part. Like the men with him, you just see Saul, the revered, powerful, religious, and political leader with a huge reputation, fall down, and then he gets up and he's suddenly blind. And he won't drink or eat for 3 days? What's going on? You might not be able to explain it, but something definitely went down. Cut to the other side of the story. In Damascus, there was a man named Ananias who had a vision. The Lord called him by name.
Ananias, yes, Lord, he answered. Go to the house of Judas on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul.
I would imagine Ananias got that far into the vision and shut it down. He knows who Saul is. He knows what Saul has done. He probably even has some friends or acquaintances in Jerusalem who had suffered at the hands of Saul. The voice of the Lord continues.
For Saul is praying. In a vision, he has seen a man named Ananias come and place his hands on him to restore his sight. Go, this man is my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and their kings and to the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name.
Ananias finds Saul, prays for him, and Luke records this.
Immediately, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes.
From that moment on, he's a changed man, a 180-degree turn, the complete opposite direction. Dramatic? I mean, it doesn't get much more dramatic than Christian killer becomes a Christian. But it didn't stop there. And here's the proof that his conversion was real. Paul traveled the known world planting churches. He wrote almost 30% of the New Testament, and he's most definitely suffered for the cause of Christ. Saul went to Gentiles all over the Roman Empire, proclaiming Jesus to the people and to their king, Agrippa, Festus, and Felix. Then he was shipwrecked, imprisoned, and beaten. Every step of the way, he shared the gospel, possibly even to the highest-ranking Gentile in the world, the Roman emperor himself. Early Christian tradition suggests that Paul was eventually martyred in Rome during the reign of Emperor Nero. One last thing, his name. A detail of Luke's, though subtle, is so rich. In Acts chapter 13:13, it says this:
Now Paul and his companions set sail.
Luke makes the shift from Saul to Paul. The one who changes his name is not Jesus, it's Luke. Maybe Luke begins to refer to him by his Greek name, along with the shift of the church out of Jerusalem to the ends of the earth. Luke, the detailed historian, is doing the same. Saul to Paul, a fitting dramatic change in this dramatic conversion story.